Revenge films.
I live with my wife and daughter in a house in the city. One day, my wife had gone out to go grocery shopping, and it was just me and our 18-year-old daughter in the house. We were in the living room, watching a new movie together.
That movie was so good. I'm really happy and ended on a good note.
Yeah, it really was. I think we found a favorite, huh? I wouldn't say it's the same for my wife, but my daughter has taken after me and enjoys going to the cinema and staying at home to watch movies as a hobby. We have the same taste in movies, so we often go to the movies to watch new releases together. What do you want to watch next? An action movie? Or would you prefer a mystery?
I think I feel like watching a mystery now.
After deciding on what to watch next, my daughter set the next DVD, and as she started the film, I got a phone call from my wife. The moment I answered the phone call...
Honey, are you home now? You've got to take Sally and get out of there right now.
What? What happened? I don't understand.
I'll explain afterwards. You've just got to trust me. You have to run away. Take Sally and leave the house. You can't stay there.
At first, I was pretty freaked out by my wife's demand, but the desperation in her voice was serious, and I realized that something bad was going to happen if we didn't do as she said. All right, we'll leave. Don't worry. I'm leaving with Sally right now. We'll leave the house. Is that okay?
I want you to go somewhere safe. Take Sally to your parents' house, please. That's the only place I could trust.
My parents' house? But it'll take over an hour to get there. Can't we just go to the shopping center? What do you mean by safe?
It's not safe. Trust me.
My wife was adamant that I had to take our daughter to my parents' house and wouldn't accept no for an answer. I still didn't understand why she was asking me to do that, but I decided that it would be best to trust my wife's judgment and follow her orders. Sally, let's forget about watching the movie. We've got to leave the house.
What? Why? I've already got everything ready. I was looking forward to it.
We can watch it when we get back. Anyway, we've got to leave. We're going to go to Grandpa and Grandma's house. Let's go.
What?
You don't need to bring anything. So let's get in the car, quickly. Come on.
Yeah, okay, I'm coming. I'll just get my phone and purse. Just give me a second.
I did as my wife, Amy, told me to, and drove our daughter to my parents' house. We'd left our house, and I hoped, the danger that my wife was so afraid of. My parents were surprised when we turned up on their doorstep without any warning, and asked what had happened. Well, this is a surprise. We didn't know you would be coming to visit us today. Did something happen? Are you all okay? Well, I don't actually know. I think something must be going on, but I haven't heard the details. I just suddenly got a call from Amy when she was out, and she begged me to get Sally out of the house and to bring her here. Of course, my parents were really confused. We hadn't warned them we were coming, so naturally, they would wonder what had happened. But if we didn't know anything ourselves, it's no surprise that they were scratching their heads. Anyway, could I leave Sally to you and Mom? I'm going to try and call Amy and find out what's going on. I'm worried about her too. Yeah, sure. They were confused, but thankfully, neither of them complained. They looked like they were happy to see Sally for the first time in a while, and took it as a chance to shower her with attention.
Sally, it's so good to see you. You're even more beautiful than the last time. I'm happy to see you too. Have you and Grandpa been doing okay? How are you both feeling?
We're both fit as a fiddle. Oh, I know! We have some blueberry cheesecake. That's your favorite, isn't it? I just bought some this morning, so let's eat it together. You can have the biggest piece.
Really? I want some. Let's go in and eat.
While my parents and Sally were having fun talking, I tried calling my wife so that I could find out the truth behind why she had suddenly told us to run away. But it turned out that she was also on her way and couldn't speak on the phone, so I decided to sit tight and wait for her to arrive.
Thank goodness. You're okay. Is Sally inside?
Yeah, she's okay. What on earth happened? When I asked my wife to explain her actions, she told me something shocking. She has a few mom friends that she's known ever since Sally and their kids were in middle school, but apparently, there's one mom friend that she's always hated. To be more precise, she's always had trouble getting along with her. That mom friend's name is Melissa, and she has a son who's the same age as Sally, and they go to the same high school. You might think that I'm exaggerating because I'm her dad, but because she's taken after her mother in the looks department, Sally has always been a beautiful girl. We've received lots of compliments about her, and unfortunately, that's made her the target of Melissa's son's affections, and he's gone as far as to bother her in and out of school. Sally has warned him about it before, but apparently, Melissa's son recently celebrated becoming 18 years old, and my wife got a phone call from Melissa to let her know.
Guess what? Hugh finally turned 18, so he and Sally can get married. Isn't that wonderful?
It made me shiver. My wife told me how she wanted to believe that it was a bad joke, but was afraid that Melissa was being serious. I hate to say this, but Melissa's son, Hugh, was infamous for being a bully, for stealing, and for forcing other people to steal things for him. He wasn't disciplined, was selfish, greedy, and was obviously overweight as a result of his own laziness. Of course, my wife told Melissa straight out that she had no intention of letting Hugh marry Sally, and made it clear that it was never happening. However, Melissa was persistent.
There's no point, Amy. You can't stop it from happening. She won't be able to say no to getting married to Hugh if she gets pregnant with his baby. And that won't be a problem for my son.
She made a terrifying threat to Amy and told her that she was going to go and collect Sally from our house. That's what led to my wife calling me and begging me to run away from my parents' house. Even though he's still legally a child, Hugh was already 18 and had a large build that was no different from that of an adult male, and despite his weight, had a lot of strength. I was at home with Sally at the time, but my wife was afraid of the 1 in a million chance that Hugh might hurt me just to get to Sally. She didn't want anything to happen to either of us, and desperately begged for me to trust her. She believed that Sally would be safe if we went to my parents' house, because she had never shared that information with Melissa. It was the only place she could think of that Melissa would never be able to find us, and was worried that being at the local shopping center wouldn't be enough to stop her and Hugh. So that's why you sounded so panicked. That makes a lot of sense. But they must be crazy if they think that they can do something like that!
Yeah, I just wanted to get Sally away from the house as soon as possible. I didn't have any other choice but to do that. I'm so sorry I scared you, but I didn't know what else I could say to make you understand that it was really serious.
Don't be sorry. You did what you had to do. And I'm pretty sure that I would have done the same too. But what do? We don't have to worry about Sally going to school because it's still the summer holidays. But what if they keep this up? It might be best to talk to the police before we try and go home. They might be waiting for us to return.
You're right. I hate to bother your parents, but do you think they could just keep Sally there for a while? Just until we settle everything? We've got to talk to the police, and it's not safe for her to be home with us.
Just when we were talking about what we should do next, we were interrupted by a phone call. My wife's phone was ringing. I couldn't believe what I heard when she answered. The phone call was from the police, and they informed us that Melissa and her son had been arrested for trespassing in our home. When we heard the news, we ran inside my parents' house to let Sally know what had happened, and to convince her to stay.
That's why we want you to stay here with Grandma and Grandpa where it's safe. Do you think you could do that for us? It's just for a while.
Yeah, I don't want to go home if he's still around. He's such a creep. There's no way I'm marrying him. I can't stand him.
Sally accepted that it was an emergency, and agreed to stay at my parents' house. It wasn't hard to imagine why. Hugh had practically been stalking her, and had been insisting that she go on a date with him, no matter how much she refused. Once my parents found out the truth behind why we had turned up...
It's okay. You won't be bored, Sally. You've got a lot of DVDs, and we could go to the cinema and go shopping whenever you like. What do you think, Sally? It sounds great.
We entrusted Sally to my parents, and my wife and I got in the car. We decided to check up on our house before we went to see the police that had arrested Melissa and Hugh. But when we arrived, we could already tell that they had put up a struggle with the police. As well as the mess in our garden, our living room window was shattered, and it was clear that they had entered the house through the broken glass because I had locked the doors before I left with Sally. While we were looking around the house, our neighbor appeared from her doorway and called out to us.
Oh, you're home! You won't believe this! I saw some strangers coming up into the driveway. Just when I was wondering who they could be, they went straight up to your window and broke in! They looked like a mother and her son, but I called the police because they were holding bats.
Thank you so much! We heard from the police that they had arrested them both, It's thanks to you reporting them.
Thank you. We're heading to the police station to find out what happened right after we check on everything. Is everything okay? How's Sally? They were saying something about her, and I was scared that they were going to hurt her.
She's okay. We'll tell you the details when we get back from the station. Thank you. Really. Thank you.
Don't worry about it. Just take care, okay?
After that, we went to our local police station to hear everything from the police officer that had called us. We heard from them that not long after Melissa made that call to Amy, both she and Hugh had rushed over to our house to come after Sally. When we wouldn't answer the door, and they realized that it was locked, they assumed that we were hiding Sally away from them, and they had forced their way in through the window, calling for Sally all the while. It all happened right after we had left the house, and it should have been clear that nobody was home, but they were tenacious and made a mess of the house in their search for our daughter. When they caught sight of us at the police station, they had the nerve to call out to us.
Where is Sally? What have you done with her? Why are you hiding her from us?
Where's my bride? Give her back to us! And they even tried lunging themselves at us. But there was no way that they would be able to get at us. We were in a police station, and we were surrounded by officers that pushed them down onto the ground and kept them immobile. Luckily for us, they had been caught trespassing, and they had even left evidence of their threat to attack our daughter. So it wasn't difficult to charge them, not only for breaking and entering, but also for the threats they had made, because they had actually tried to act on them. And it seems that the reason why Melissa was so fixated on getting her son to marry Sally, even if it meant getting her pregnant against her wishes, was because she was after our money. Melissa happened to be a single mother, but she knew that I was running my own company, and she thought that if she managed to get our children married, I would make her son the next in line to take over my business. And once her son was CEO, she believed that she could control him and make all of our money her own. That was her extravagant plan to make money fast. However, that plan went up in flames, and both she and her young son ended up with offenses on their record. We didn't want to make a big deal out of the problem, so we dealt with them in private. But it did end up as a small article in the papers. Unfortunately, Melissa's parents found out about what had happened, and were so embarrassed by Melissa's actions that they came to collect them and said,
I'm so sorry about what our daughter tried to do. I'll make sure she learns her lesson.
"We won't let these idiots go anywhere near your daughter ever again. Please don't worry, they won't bother you." They handed us an envelope that contained $10,000 as compensation. When she saw that, Melissa was outraged.
It's a win-win situation for me and my son if Sally becomes his wife. Why would you stop us from doing something that benefits us? Why would you give them our money? We don't owe them anything.
You tried to assault someone's daughter and even broke into their home and made a mess of it in your attempt to kidnap her. You don't have any right to complain about your benefits. You're leaving this town and never coming back. You're coming home with us and helping us in the fields.
No, I'm not going back there. I worked so hard to escape from that country hick town. You're not making me go back. Quiet, Melissa. I don't want to hear anything out of you. We haven't heard from you in years, and we get a phone call from the police. You're an embarrassment. I'm so ashamed of both of you.
Melissa's arguments that she was working for her son's sake fell on deaf ears, and her own parents smacked her right in front of us for not showing any remorse for what she had done. And then, just a few days later, it seems they packed up and really were forced to return to Melissa's parents' house. Then, a while after they had left town, we heard a few rumors about them from the other moms, that they were still getting messages from Melissa, despite refusing to talk to her. It looks like Melissa and Hugh really did return to the countryside, where Melissa's parents owned an apple farm. They were both forced to work for free to help care for, pick, and get the apples ready for delivery. Melissa had been complaining to the other moms that she was having a horrible time, but thanks to them both disappearing, Sally no longer has to worry about being stalked by Hugh, and she can finally live in peace. I'm really glad that Melissa's parents had the common sense to take them far, far away. But even if they both did stay in this neighborhood, the rumor about them having been arrested by the police for breaking and entering would have spread like wildfire, and Melissa would have lost her job, and they wouldn't have been able to stay here for very long anyway. I feel bad for her parents for having to deal with them, but Melissa and Hugh both got what they deserve. This is a story about when my wife was left in the woods. My wife and I were still 32 years old when it happened. But one day, she suddenly announced that she had been invited to a get-together with her school friends.
So, my friends from high school suggested that we go out next Sunday to have dinner and catch up. It's been years since I've seen some of them, so can I go?
Yeah, sure. It really has been a long time since we both graduated from our high schools. So you should go and have some fun. And I agreed that she should go. We have a young daughter together, and at the time, she was only 3 years old. I was happy to take care of her and have some quality time with her while my wife was gone and enjoying her alumni party. But I could imagine that she would be pretty busy catching up, and that there would probably be an after party with her closest friends. It was likely that she wouldn't be home until late at night. I was a little worried about whether our daughter would go to sleep properly, but thankfully, with perfect timing, my parents called and said that they wanted me to bring her to visit them. So I decided that I would take my daughter to visit my parents on the same night that Charlie would be going out with her friends. On the day, all three of us got into the car, and I dropped my wife off at the restaurant where her school friends were waiting, before heading to my parents' house with our daughter. I didn't want to get in the way of my wife's fun, so I put my phone away and didn't interrupt her dinner, and spent the evening eating dinner and watching our little girl play with her grandparents. I sent Charlie a message at around 11 p.m. to let her know that I had put our daughter to sleep, and to tell her that she had said goodnight, but it seemed like she hadn't checked her phone. I thought that she might just be busy and hadn't had the time to look at her messages, but no matter how many hours passed, I didn't get any reply, and the chat showed that she still hadn't read my messages. It was strange of her to not reply for this long, so I decided to finally call her phone and see how she was doing, but I couldn't get through to her. She's a grown adult, and she was really excited about seeing her old friends, and it wouldn't have been weird if she had just gotten drunk and had fallen asleep at home or a friend's house. So I left my phone on beside my table and went to sleep. I didn't want to bother any of her friends in the middle of the night, so I got started on calling them when I woke up in the morning, and found that I still hadn't gotten a reply. I explained what had happened, and I had already told my parents that I couldn't get in touch with Charlie, but I still hadn't checked with my wife's parents, so I called them to let them know that I wasn't getting any response from Charlie. When I told him, my father-in-law said, "Where is she? What the hell is she doing? I can't believe she still hasn't answered!" Well, he got pretty mad. And as for my mother-in-law,
Hang on. She's not having an affair, is she?
she got a little carried away and jumped to conclusions. But they were both worried about the worst-case scenario and reported Charlie as AWOL to the police. Not long after that, I got a phone call from one of Charlie's friends, and she told me,
We were together until the after party ended, but Charlie got on the car with one of our designated drivers, so she should have gone home without any problem. Hasn't she come back home yet? And she hasn't messaged you?
she let me know that Charlie didn't go home on her own, so my wife should have arrived at our house sometime late last night. Once her friend knew that Charlie hadn't been responding to any of our messages, she asked around and got the phone number of the guy that had driven her home. I called it right away, only for it to go to voicemail. Neither Charlie nor the man that had driven her home were answering my phone calls, and I couldn't help but remember what my mother-in-law had said, and panicked at the prospect that Charlie could possibly be cheating on me. I trusted her, but the situation made it difficult to ignore. Charlie's friends all worked hard to get information from the people who had last seen her and been with her in the car, when I finally got a phone call from Charlie herself. "Charlie, where are you? Why haven't you been answering any of my calls? I've got everyone looking for you! I've been so worried!" When I finally managed to speak to my wife, I was shocked that she began to cry on the other end of the call, and she slowly started talking about what had happened to her. Apparently, the man that had been driving her had pretended to be driving her out of kindness, but had actually tried to assault her when they were alone. At first, she'd politely told him that she was married and wasn't interested, but he had gotten angry that she had turned him down, and left her in the woods over 60 miles away from where our house was. I'd only ever heard of that kind of situation in movies, and I could barely believe that it had happened in real life. But my wife was sobbing and begging for me to come and get her, and it was clear that she really was traumatized by the situation. Not only that, the driver had taken her bag and phone while he was driving, so she had no choice but to make her way through the woods without any guidance or any chance of rescue. She was lucky that she had found a house where she made it out, and an old lady had offered her help when she found my wife. Of course, there were no streetlights in the woods, and it was pitch black during the night, which had made it difficult to find her way through the trees and bushes without hurting herself. She told me how she had gotten cuts and scratches all over her body. When Charlie made it out of the woods, a local resident found my wife, exhausted, bloodied, and afraid, and took her to her house to let Charlie have a bath and have some dinner so that she could recover from the injuries she had suffered. I got Charlie to ask what the old lady's address was and left my daughter with my parents so that I could go and collect her. While I was on my way, I contacted the police, Charlie's parents, and her friends to let them know that I had finally found her. Charlie's friends then spread the word to all the other people who had been at the party to let them know that Charlie was safe and sound. It took over an hour to find the place that had taken my wife in because it was so deep in the mountains. But when I arrived, my wife really was there. And the second she saw me, she threw herself at me and clutched me tightly, crying all the while. The old lady that had found my wife was also glad to see me and mentioned,
It's a miracle that she made it all the way here. The woods in this area are pretty deep, and there are hills too, making it really difficult to walk in a straight line. Even the people that have lived here their whole lives have a hard time finding their way on their way home from getting wood. Your wife is a very strong woman for making it all the way here. She must have been thinking about you all the time she was walking.
She praised Charlie for her determination and for being able to make it out of the woods alive without being familiar with the area. After that, I took Charlie to the hospital to get checked up and have a few tests done to make sure she wasn't seriously hurt.
We have a daughter now.
While we were at the hospital, I got a phone call from the
to
police
some privacy.
telling me that the man that had left
wouldn't
Charlie in the
mind
woods had
having
been
a little
arrested
more time
and
alone.
taken to the station for questioning. But it turned out that the designated driver was a pretty twisted guy, because when the police asked him why he had left my wife in the woods, his only excuse was that, I told her that she was going to have the honor of enjoying the night with me, but she went and told me she wasn't interested. Why is it my fault? I just left her in the woods because she got lippy with me. It's her own fault. And argued that he wasn't in the wrong. I finally understood the meaning of feeling like my blood was boiling. It was the first time I had ever experienced anger like that, and I was disgusted by him. My wife told me that she had been polite at first and tried to let him down easy, but he suddenly started driving in the opposite direction of our house and got onto the freeway. When she realized what he was doing, Charlie began to panic and attempted to call me, only for him to take her stuff away from her. Just imagining the thought of being stuck in a moving car with someone else behind the driving wheel and then being suddenly taken on a freeway against my will, I could understand why Charlie had panicked and didn't know what else she could do. After driving the freeway for half an hour, he had stopped the car in the woods and made an attempt to assault her, but she had managed to bite his arm and got him to back away from her for a split second. According to the police, the man had made complaints about her biting him and said, I'm going to make her pay for biting me like that! She's going to court for hurting me! Look at it! I was bleeding! Apparently, he thinks that it's reason enough to sue Charlie. He's got another thing coming if he thinks that we're going to pay any compensation to him. A friend of Charlie's told me that the man had offered to drive 3 people who had been drinking, including Charlie, but she had ended up being the last one in the car and had ended up alone with him. I didn't know if he had had his eye on Charlie from the very beginning, or if he had just decided to attack her spontaneously because she had ended up being the last one in the car with him. But when it was just the 2 of them, he said, I want to stop by the convenience store, and had announced to Charlie that he wanted to go to a store that was near the entrance to the freeway. My wife told him she was fine with it, but was surprised when he passed the store by and continued to drive until he had reached the freeway. I'm going to throw you out of the car if you don't let me do what I want. He had suddenly threatened her, and my wife was afraid about what he might do. But of course, he couldn't do anything to her while he was still driving. He got off the freeway when they entered the next state, and he began driving into some mountainous area. And when he found some dark area in the woods, he threatened her again. You can either be a good girl and stop struggling, or you can get out, and I'm gonna leave you here. My wife didn't think twice before shaking him off, and got out of the car, desperate to get away from him, and ran away as fast as she could. But by the time the man had stopped the car, it was already the middle of the night, and naturally, there wasn't any light in the woods. My wife was terrified and was anxious about what might happen to her, but she didn't look back, and only thought about coming home to us, and used that as strength to keep on running and running until she finally made it out, despite being only 32 years old. The man that had assaulted my wife was the young CEO of a company that he had built himself, and had become successful thanks to a string of forceful and barely legal methods. Whatever I want, I get. If I say it, it's true. That was apparently his catchphrase, and it was clear that he was used to the world revolving around him. I had the urge to punch the guy's lights out and make him suffer for the way he had hurt my wife. But a friend of mine reminded me that it would be bad for us if I did anything violent, and told me to stay away from him, just in case. But despite the warnings from my friends, I couldn't help but feel like there was a storm inside my chest. All of my feelings were mixed up, and I was desperate to get revenge. After dealing with the police, the culprit's parents came to apologize to us. But
Please, we don't want to make a big deal of this. Would you accept this?
they tried handing me an envelope with close to $10,000 inside. But the feelings that had been stirring up inside me began to bubble over, and I could feel that something had snapped. Do you really think that $10,000 or so is enough for me to forgive your son for what he did? Do you think that it's enough for my wife to forget and get over her trauma? It's not! Do you really understand how serious this is? What your son tried to do to my wife? He attempted to assault her! He even threatened her and left her in the woods for dead! Just how many crimes does he have to commit before he's satisfied? My wife thought that she was going to die! I was worried sick! Her friends, parents, we're all out searching for Charlie. A resident in the area around the woods told me that it was a miracle that she had managed to make it out of the woods alive. It was a miracle that my wife got away with only cuts and bruises. You should have seen her! And you think that you can pay us compensation to keep our mouths shut? I'm not interested in dealing with this privately. I'm taking your son to court, and he's going to pay for what he did. Get out! I gave them a piece of my mind and kicked them out of the house. And I wasn't the only one that was angry. Our parents, Charlie's friends, and Charlie herself were furious that she was made to suffer the way she did. And she wanted justice. She decided that she wanted to take the man to court and have him sentenced to time in jail. So the fact that his parents had come to our house and brought a measly $10,000 as hush money had pissed me off to no end, and had made me send them away. Through further questioning at the police station, it was found out that the driver had targeted my wife and had chosen to drive her in order to attack her on the way home. Apparently, he'd always been interested in her, since they were in high school together, and had caught sight of her at the party. Not only that, he had been listening to the conversations Charlie had been having with the other girls at another table. He heard them talking about how much sex they were having now that they were married. And my wife had said,
We have a daughter now, so it's a little difficult to find time and get some privacy. But I wouldn't mind having a little more time alone.
he had heard what she had said to her friends, and seemed to think that it meant she was sexually frustrated, and assumed that he had a chance at sleeping with her if he hit on her, and thought that he would be able to become friends with benefits. Only God knows why. He really is a piece of crap. It pissed me off that he thought that everything would work out the way he wanted it to. But it didn't take long for the court to decide that the man was guilty for several crimes, and he was thrown straight into jail. And the more the police searched, the more they found. Several women working at his company called him out for sexual assault, and investigations concluded that he had used similar methods to get them to sleep with him. Once he realized that he was going to be sentenced to time in jail, he even had the nerve to assert that, "None of this is my fault! What did I do wrong? They were all lonely and wanted sex! I gave them what they wanted! What's wrong with that? They wanted to have sex with me!" He didn't show any remorse for his actions, and that only increased his time in jail. Of course, once his imprisonment was made public, his company lost trust among their partners, and their shares went down within a matter of hours. His company went bankrupt within days. Furthermore, all of the classmates that had attended the alumni party found out what he had done to Charlie, and condemned him for his actions. All of the people that he knew demanded that he stay away from them, and cut ties with him. It seems that everyone who knew him from their time at school already had an idea of how selfish he was. And once they had heard about the crimes he had committed, no one would side with him, and he lost all the allies he once had. For a long while after that, my wife was traumatized by the events of that night, and couldn't help but feel sick whenever she got into a car, and would feel unreasonably afraid whenever she saw mountains or the woods. She went to see a doctor and was talking to a psychiatrist, and with the help of her friends, and of course support from me, she eventually was able to forget about what had happened, and didn't feel as anxious as she did in the first few weeks after the alumni party. She had been looking forward to seeing all her friends for the first time in years, and it was a precious chance for her to catch up and find out what they were all doing with their lives. I hated that her night had been ruined by one stupid guy that was only thinking with his libido, and I'll never forgive him for what he tried to do, and how he had made my wife suffer. I'm going to make sure that she never has to suffer in the same way ever again by supporting her and taking care of her, and hope that we can spend the rest of our lives together without any more idiots like that guy bothering us.
My name is Emily Sanders. My husband Thomas and I tried a knot 2 years ago, and we've been happily married ever since. Thomas worries about absolutely everything, but despite how nervous he could get, he's a hard worker, and he's been very successful at his job. We're a happy couple, and you'd think that we were still newlyweds if you saw how well we got along. We were thinking about it was time to start a family and have been trying to have a baby. But all of a sudden...
What? An affair?
My parents called me out to their house and suddenly accused me of having an affair. I was speechless, but not out of guilt. Yet they concluded that their doubts were correct and continued talking as though I was really cheating on my husband.
So it was true?
My dad's harsh words echoed throughout the living room, and my mom only looked at me and sighed, as though she was sad that I was capable of something that unforgivable. But I really haven't had an affair. I would never cheat on Thomas. Why can't you believe me? Ever since I was a child, my parents have always jumped to conclusions and blamed me for things that happened, even though I'd never done anything what they had doubted me for. Because of that, I had developed a habit of panicking and becoming unable to argue back when someone had accused me of something. There were a few occasions on which ornaments, jewelry, and money vanished into thin air when I was little, and when I made my first boyfriend, he broke up with me for some unknown reason. Those were just some of the events that led to me to lose more and more confidence in myself, because I was usually blamed for everything. Every time an issue like this came up, I would always get pointed at, and I would get hurt. I could never stand up for myself, and it didn't take long before the fear of being doubted took over and made me mentally weak.
We've got information from someone we can trust, Emily. We know that you've been meeting with another man behind Thomas's back. You're having an affair, and there's no point hiding it.
I had no money of ever meeting with someone, let alone having an affair with them. And now I was a housewife. I didn't leave the house as much as I used to.
Thomas is a good man and a good husband. He works hard to bring home money. He worries a little too much, but he's still a waste on a woman like you. You don't deserve him. But you won't find anyone else that's willing to marry someone like you, so we shouldn't tell him. How about we keep this a secret between us, right, honey?
You're right, dear. If Thomas finds out that she's been cheating on him, he might even demand a divorce, and we'll never get rid of her. We don't want that. Divorce? Why would Thomas want a divorce? We've been enjoying our new life together as a married couple this past 2 years. We were even trying to have a baby. Despite finding out that I was infertile, we were supporting each other and researching IVF treatment as a way to work through it together. We were about to start a family together, so why would we get divorced? Why is this happening to me? Why are they talking about the possibility of me getting divorced? In the end, I was too shocked and anxious to say anything to my parents. And they had already decided that the conversation was over. I didn't have the courage to ask them any more about what they had heard or why they thought I was having an affair. He said that he has information from someone he could trust, but who could that be? Who could possibly accuse me of having an affair? I couldn't help but go over the conversation I had with my parents over and over on the train ride home in order to get some clue of what they're accusing me of. But knowing my dad, he would probably come out with evidence if he had anything and would show it off just to prove that he was right, but he didn't. That must mean that he doesn't actually have any proof, any pictures or videos to confirm his claims. Then I don't have to worry about any of this getting out of hand. But it was a matter of course that they didn't have any evidence because I really hadn't been having an affair. But if they were insisting that I had been cheating on Thomas, then they must have something. Otherwise, I can't understand why would they believe hearsay. It doesn't make any sense. And why would the person that told them make something up like that? I don't understand their motives for lying. When I arrived back home, the house was still empty. Thomas was probably stuck doing overtime at work. I felt lonely not having anyone to share my worries with and decided to call my little sister so I could hear someone's voice. Hey, Chloe, are you free to talk right now? Yeah, sure. What's up?
Well, the truth is, Mom and Dad called me over today, and we had a bit of a misunderstanding again. It's kind of bothering me. I've always been pretty unlucky getting blamed for things I had never done. Whatever valuable items had disappeared in our house, I was always told off for taking them. And my middle school boyfriend dumped me without even telling me why he wanted to break up.
Again? What happened this time? What did they say to you?
I wasn't sure whether I should tell Chloe the details of what my parents had said to me, but in the end, I decided to talk to her about it. I really wanted to ask my husband for advice on what I should do, and warn him that my parents doubted my fidelity. But after seeing that he wasn't home, I realized that it wasn't a good idea to tell him when he was so busy with work. And telling him would only make him worry needlessly. Well,
This is really hard to say, but Mom and Dad think I'm having an affair. They won't believe me even when I say that I haven't met other guys. My sister burst into laughter.
They're so stupid. I can't believe they'd actually think something like that. They've always been like that. They don't know either of us properly, do they? It's hilarious that they think that you are capable of having an affair. I mean, we all lived together for almost 20 years. You'd think they'd know.
My little sister was absolutely right. Our dad is really strict and righteous, but he never listens to what other people say. And our mom never disobeys our dad and always tries to please him.
There's no way you'd have an affair. Don't worry, Emily. I believe you. No matter what Mom and Dad say, I always will be by your side, so you can count on me.
Chloe, thank you! I couldn't help but tear up a little at Chloe's kind words.
But are you sure you haven't gone to any cafes or any restaurants? With some guy? Maybe that's why.
Now that I think about it calmly, there was something that came to mind. I had been to a cafe with a certain man in the past. I completely forgot! About a month ago, I bumped into my manager from the place I was working at before I married Thomas. We had a lot to catch up on, like me marrying Thomas and his wife giving birth. So he offered to buy me a coffee so we could talk. But it's not like we went anywhere that had any hotels nearby. We just talked. I don't know how they got any idea I was cheating.
What's the name of this guy you met?
Huh? His name? Why do you want to know that? You don't actually think...
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that that's the person Mom and Dad think you're having an affair with. You've got to do something about it.
What, really? You think so? But I only met him once, and we don't even message each other that much. There's nothing for me to be ashamed of.
But there's no one else that comes to mind, right? Then it must be that guy. You should meet him again and tell him what happened, and explain that you can't talk to him anymore if you don't want Mom and Dad breathing down your neck. If he's the manager at your previous workplace, then it would be rude just to message him that you can't see him and not tell him to his face.
Yeah, I guess so. I'll try to see if he's free to meet this weekend so I can explain. After letting everything off my chest, I felt a lot better. But I didn't realize that things were just gonna get a lot worse. I met my former manager on the weekend, and just a few days later, I was called to my parents' house yet again and was ordered to bring Thomas. It seems that Chloe and her husband were also called too, but my husband couldn't make it because of work.
Emily! What the hell do you think you're doing? You swore to us that you would never cheat on your husband ever again! How could you embarrass us like this? We didn't tell Thomas because we believed you!
What? Wait, please listen to what I have to say! But my voice was too weak. I didn't have the strength to argue back. My parents have always doubted me, and have never listened to my side of the story. It was too difficult for me to talk back to them, even though I was desperate to clear up the misunderstanding. For some reason, my parents never listened to me, and I doubt that they'll ever change their prejudices of me. Furthermore, this time they announced,
"Don't you dare try and tell me that we're wrong! We have clear, undeniable proof that you've been cheating! Are you still going to deny what you've done?"
My dad slammed several photos onto the dining room table. I looked down at the proof that he bought, and saw myself in the photograph sitting at a table with a former manager looking like we were having a fun chat. They were photographs from when I had told him that I couldn't talk to him anymore because my parents thought that we were having an affair. I didn't know what my husband was thinking. His expression hadn't changed since my dad had started talking, and I had no idea what he thought of this accusation.
Seriously? Emily, you really got me. I actually believed you, but look at that. It's evidence. You've always been a really shy woman ever since school. I still remember when you got dumped in 9th grade. Wait, wasn't that because that rumor about you kissing that boy in the other class? I remember being really surprised that you were so cheap. Oh yeah, that stuff was always going missing in the house too. That was you too, wasn't it?
What? She was doing that sort of thing in middle school too? Unforgivable!
My dad jumped at the words that came out of my sister's mouth, and my mom just followed my dad's lead. Please, it's not true! You have to listen to me. I haven't done any of that. I was finally able to argue back to their accusations, but nobody was listening. My voice was too small and thin for them to listen. Even if they listened, they weren't interested in what I had to say, except for one.
She's saying she hasn't done any of that.
For a second, I didn't know who spoke up.
What? Are you going to believe her, Thomas?
My dad stared at Thomas in awe and waited for his response.
Of course. If anything, why would you believe a photograph like this? They aren't doing anything wrong. They're just eating and talking. I don't understand how you can believe hearsay over what your own daughter is saying. I seriously can't understand your reasoning, sir. But, you've been saying that you've got proof, but you haven't told us who took these photographs, or who's been saying that Emily's been cheating on me. I want to know who's been accusing my wife of having an affair. It's only fair that we know. But I can't tell you. If I say that, it might cause a rupture in our family. We won't be able to talk to each other the way we have up until now if I tell you who said that Emily did all those things. Are you thinking you can avoid a rupture if you keep on blaming Emily for things she hasn't done? If you don't make it clear who's responsible for accusing Emily, then you can't expect her to continue to treat you like family. So who is it? I want to know who's been hurting Emily by spreading all these lies about what she's done. I guess that means you don't believe the person that witnessed Emily having an affair. All right, then I'll tell you. Chloe, explain to Thomas what you saw last weekend. Then he'll understand.
What? Well, I just... Chloe started sweating buckets. I had never seen her look so nervous before. She was always a calm and collected one, so it put me off guard to see her like that. But after hearing what she had to say, I finally understood. I was stupid to trust her. If I didn't have complete faith in her, I would have realized sooner just how weak her lies had been. I should have. And considering how self-righteous my dad was and how my mom would always keep quiet, they would have never mentioned that it was Chloe. It was thanks to Thomas speaking up and demanding that they tell us that I was finally able to open my eyes and see what was happening. I was even more shocked when Thomas began questioning all of the things my sister had seen when I was with my former manager, and about all the things that had happened when I was younger, and a lot of truths came to light. Chloe was the root cause of why so many items had gone missing, and she was the one that started a rumor about me in school. She had been behind everything, making me look bad by mentioning hints to our parents, suggesting that I was the one that had taken everything.
I'm really sorry. Please forgive me. I won't do it ever again. I'm really sorry. I couldn't help myself.
I'm sorry, Thomas. It looks like you were right. And Emily, I'm sorry for placing unwarranted blame on you. I should have been more reasonable. Please, forgive me for doubting you all this time. I should have believed you.
My parents and my little sister all begged me for forgiveness, and I finally felt as though all the misunderstandings had been cleared. I was relieved that everything was sorted out. In the car on the way home, I couldn't help but thank my husband over and over for defending me. Thank you so much, Tom. I'm so happy you believed in me.
Of course I believe you.
But I never imagined that Chloe was behind all of those accusations. I still can't believe that she tried to cover up her own affair by creating a fake scandal with my marriage. And I never realized that she was the one to start telling my parents that I was stealing from them. I didn't think she was capable of something like that.
I wish that you'd rely on me a lot more. I get that I worry a little too much sometimes, but I can't help it. And that doesn't mean that I can't deal with issues like this. I want to be the kind of guy that can help his wife when she needs it. I want you to feel like you can trust me. I'll do better to worry less.
Yes, I will. A few days later, I got a phone call from my little sister.
Emily, you've got to help me.
Hey, Chloe! Your parents told me that you've been having an affair! What the hell were you thinking?
I could hear her husband shouting at her on the other side of the phone call. Our parents had forgiven her for lying to them as long as she promised to never make the same mistakes again. But it seems that her husband was unable to forgive her that easily. I wasn't surprised.
Wait, please, it wasn't serious.
I could hear her making desperate excuses, and I spoke up so that she could hear what I had to say. What do you mean it wasn't serious? That's not a good enough reason for cheating on your husband, Chloe. You've got to apologize sincerely if you want him to forgive you. After seeing the way Thomas had stood up for me, I was finally able to make my own voice heard. But after that, my sister persistently begged me to help her deal with her husband.
Emily, please, can you come with me to apologize to him? He won't listen to me.
I don't want to.
Please, I always listened to you and gave you advice when you asked for it. Why can't you pay me back just this once? I need your help.
You were the cause of my troubles to begin with. All you were doing was putting out a fire you started yourself. But when Chloe's husband appeared to take her back home before she caused any more trouble in my home, I decided that it wouldn't hurt to tell him that she really did love him, and that it was just a stupid mistake. You might think I was being too soft on her, but even so, she was my only sister, and she really has been trying ever since I found out the truth. I just wanted the best for her. A few days later, I heard Chloe's husband had told her off, and had set rules for her when she wanted to go out, but he had, overall, forgiven her for her affair. He brought her back to see me, and they both apologized for causing me trouble, and for the other things that I hadn't even noticed that Chloe had said to me in the past few years to my parents. Things I hadn't even noticed. When she confessed about everything else she had done, I finally saw that she had changed a lot since the family talk we had with our parents' house. It made me feel a lot better that her husband was willing to stay with her too.
She needed a responsible guy like him to keep her on the right track since she could be so impulsive. I was pretty upset with her when I found out that she had tried to confuse everyone and steer everyone's eyes away from her own affair by questioning my relationship with Thomas. But thanks to that, I was able to see a different, almost heroic side to Thomas that I had never seen before. And I felt it was worth a bumpy ride. There's always good and bad, after all. My name is Jessica Smith. On that day, in order to go for my pregnancy checkup, I was headed to the clinic on the train. My checkups used to be once every 4 weeks, and then they became once every 2 weeks, and now they were once a week. That almost felt like a countdown until I could meet my beloved baby, and I was on cloud 9. Perhaps that excitement was on my face, because when I was on the train, there was an old man who looked like he clearly was in a bad mood, and he glared at me and stared directly at me. Since I was pregnant and the train was a little bit crowded, the old man with a cane and I sat next to each other in the priority seats.
My goodness, young people these days are so spoiled. When I was younger, even if a lady was pregnant, she would be standing on the train.
The old man was muttering under his breath, but for talking to himself, he was speaking rather loudly. I froze while sitting there, but the old man looked over at me and sneered again. His cell phone then rang, and even though we were inside of a quiet train car, he answered his phone like it was nothing. This was immediately after an announcement had just echoed from the train to please avoid speaking on the phone in the car. It was clearly against basic train etiquette, but the old man spoke loudly as if he wanted everybody to hear.
I see. So you want to talk to me? Because I've looked over so many businesses until now as a landlord. You've got a good eye, huh? Well, I do have a preschool now, and even though they're saying the birth rate is declining, looks like there are a lot of young folks around that are just popping them out. It'll turn into good money.
As he snickered when he said, "popping them out," like he was making fun of childbirth, he looked over at me. I don't like that this man is the owner of a preschool. There is no way I would ever put my child into a preschool owned by somebody like this. The old man got off at the same station as me. It seems like he was also heading towards the taxi stand, and so we started walking in the same direction. A pregnant woman and an old man with a cane. We were walking at about the same speed. We were also sitting next to each other on the train, so our distance was already quite close. I couldn't help but be bothered by the old man, whose gaze I could feel right on my back. I wanted to run and make some distance, but I was already in my 36th week, and my stomach was quite large already. If I were to trip and fall, what would happen? I was so scared that I couldn't even walk faster. However, more than anything, I was starting to get scared. Without thinking, in order to make some distance between the old man and I started walking a little bit faster. But at that moment, to make me panic even more, the old man walked faster and was breathing down my neck. I'm almost at the taxi stand. As long as I can get there.
Hey, I'm in a rush. Move! Unlike a woman like you, as a business owner, my time is a lot more valuable. So let me get the first taxi.
As he said that, the old man walked past me, and I felt his cane hook around my ankle. What? I panicked as I fell over. I tried to protect my stomach. Luckily, I didn't seem like I would miscarry. However, I was so shocked and so terrified that I froze on the spot. I could hear the old man's cane going further and further away as though nothing had happened.
Are you okay?
Not long after that, a kind woman came over, and she helped me get up. Yes, I was so stunned I could barely speak, but the woman introduced herself to me.
Hi, my name is Michelle. Your body, are you sure you're okay?
Yes, I was really shocked, but it looked like I'm okay.
I can only imagine. I was shocked too. I'm very sorry I was unable to stop him. Here, this is my business card.
Miss Michelle handed me her business card. Apparently, she was the principal of the preschool nearby. She could tell I was confused, so then she...
Actually, that old man, that's my father-in-law.
What?
At home, he's quiet, almost like a cat. But I had heard that he was a different person outside. I didn't think that it was this bad, though. I'm going to make sure that my father-in-law apologizes to you somehow.
I finally got to the hospital for my checkup. I explained that I had just fallen, and they did a more thorough checkup than usual this time.
It looks like the baby is okay. You have nothing to worry about. Everything is fine.
The exam took a lot longer than usual, and when it was finally over, the doctor told me these words. I couldn't help but let out tears of relief. 2 days later, on a weekday in the middle of the afternoon, the old man came by himself to my house to apologize. Perhaps he purposely aimed for this time that my husband was at work and I was home alone.
Hey, you fatty! Looks like we meet again. What a treat that you knew my son's wife. The world sure is small. I guess I can look past your terrible attitude and let you go this time because I'm so forgiving.
I thought he was here to apologize, but for some reason, as soon as he opened his mouth, the old man started to belittle me.
Not only that, but I heard that your little baby was fine. And yet, you're looking for an apology. You should have some shame, young folks these days. Oh, wait a minute. Were you trying to get money out of me?
And the old man started to look around my front door.
Yeah. It looks like you don't have much money anyway. And yet, look at you, trying to have a child. I guess they always say that the poorer the family, the more kids they end up with.
What on earth is your problem? I thought you came here to apologize after Miss Michelle spoke to you.
Why should I have to apologize? I have a kind personality, so I was kind enough to come and check on this stupid pregnant woman who just happened to trip over my cane and fall.
I was furious with what he was saying, so I secretly pulled out my cell phone and started to record the conversation. The old man continued to say awful things to me, but I thought that maybe this recording might come in handy, so I held back my anger and just listened. To my disbelief, this old man was yelling nonsense at me for close to an hour, and in the end, he didn't give any sort of apology and left. After the old man walked away, I immediately contacted Miss Michelle, and I copied and pasted the recording to her. When Miss Michelle heard the recording and what I had told her, she seemed appalled.
I understand.
As it turns out, even though the old man was bragging so much about being a landlord and a business owner, in reality, he had married into that family and he couldn't even lift a head to his wife. Perhaps as a result of that, he was always in a bad mood. And any time he would find a woman that seemed like a weak target, he would take out his frustrations on them. But that situation is none of my business. What if my precious baby was affected? There's a chance that she could have been killed. I didn't want any other pregnant woman to deal with the same situation, and so I vowed to stand my ground and fight. A few days later, apparently Miss Michelle spoke to her mother-in-law for me, and Miss Michelle, the old man, and his wife came over to our house together. From the very beginning, the old man was ready to fight, and he started to get at me. Even though we were meant to have a conversation, things quickly heated up. Right in front of the taxi stand, you tried to cut in front of me, and you purposely hooked your cane onto me, didn't you?
What are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about!
That is what my husband is saying, so I assume you have proof? An older woman in a very refined kimono questioned me in a quiet but stern voice. Yes, I have a witness, and it's Miss Michelle.
It's exactly as Miss Smith says. I was a witness to the incident from start to finish.
I see. So do you have any idea now?
You have to believe me. I would never do such a thing. Oh, that's right. You know how kind I am to young children and mothers because I have a preschool, right? That's why...
Instead of letting him finish, I pulled out my cell phone to press on the play recording.
That's what I said, you fat woman! I bet you were just trying to blame me, and you're trying to get money out of me, aren't you? And first of all, this is your fault anyway for walking like a sloth, and that's why I hooked my cane on your ankle.
In the next moment, the old man's decisive words echoed throughout my living room. The other day, the old man must have got carried away, and in that 1-hour rant that he went on, his mouth slipped a number of times, and Miss Michelle's mother-in-law immediately changed her expression. It looks like you can't talk your way out of this one now.
Wait, please, you have to forgive me. I promise I'll apologize.
If you're going to apologize, it should be to Miss Jessica Smith. Isn't that right? As long as she doesn't forgive you, then I will also be leaving you.
I'm sorry, Miss Jessica. I was just having a bad day and I got a little bit carried away.
Do you think that just because you're having a bad day, that it's okay for you to hook your cane around pregnant women's ankles? You don't have any other excuses, do you?
I'm never going to forgive you for that.
Please forgive me. My wife is... If she says something, she'll definitely do it.
You liar. You big liar. I'll never forgive you. Now please get out. Right now. Go. After that, the old man came and tried to confront me by himself a number of times, but I either pretended not to be home or I'd force him away. Within a month, apparently the old man's wife really did cut off all ties with him. The only thing that was left for the old man was apparently just the right to running the preschool.
Please, Miss Jessica, you have to help me. My wife found out that I was embezzling money, and with this incident, at this rate, the rights to the preschool, then if that were to happen...
The old man was pale as he started shaking from head to toe. He had aged a lot in a short time, and his clothes were weathered. Apparently, he was really starting to struggle to make ends meet. After being cut off from the family he married into, he was kicked out. So of course this was the result. Why should I have to help you? If anything, I was relieved from the bottom of my heart that a person like you was no longer running a preschool. The old man got down on his knees and apologized with his forehead to the ground. However, I refused to forgive him. I would never want to leave my children with somebody who couldn't respect a pregnant woman. If somebody like that were to be involved in business, then I'm certain that something would go wrong. I think that he needs to spend the rest of his life regretting the fact that he almost took away a young life, without even recognizing the weight of it.
Sorry! I'm sorry! Forgive me!
Never!
My name is Kathy. I live with my husband Ryan and our 4-year-old daughter Natalie. I'm employed in an office and I'm devoted to my career. I've always been passionate about my job, and thanks to a few promotions since I started working at the office, I'm currently earning a relatively high salary. And ever since I got married to Ryan and had our daughter, I've been paying the majority of the bills. I've made sure to reduce the amount of overtime I do since my daughter was born. And even though I think we could afford a babysitter, I always go and collect Natalie from kindergarten myself, so that I can treasure the little time I have with her. I don't like to cut corners with the housework, and do my best to spend as much one-on-one time with Natalie as possible. You can probably imagine that I'm always rushing around trying to get things done. On the other hand, my husband Ryan doesn't do anything. He's too reliant on me for money. For the chores, for dinner, everything. He spends all the money he makes on himself and doesn't pay it towards any bills. And to him, it's a matter of course that I do everything. I wanted him to help out more and spend more time with Natalie, but I didn't want to argue with him in front of our daughter. So I always ended up tolerating his behavior and didn't complain ever. But it's now been 6 months since we got married and we've started planning to build our own home. We thought about it for a long time before deciding to purchase some land to construct our new house on. And we bought it under both of our names so that we would have joint ownership. However, despite starting what was supposed to be a happy new chapter of our lives, there was one thing that was bothering me. Ryan's mother and older sister and their dependency on us. My mother and sister-in-law are both living at my husband's childhood home that his father left for them, but neither of them work, and they both demand that I send them money so that they can pay the electricity and pay for groceries. I thought that buying our new home was perfect timing for us to stop sending them both money since our expenses would increase with the monthly loan we would owe to pay the house. I spoke to my husband about it and told him that we couldn't afford to support his family and that they would have to find their own work. But when I mentioned stopping the payments to his mother's account, he snapped.
So you're just going to abandon my mom and sister? Why should they have to work?
However, there was no way I could give in. If I did, I would be paying the bills, sending money to my mother-in-law, and paying the loan. I didn't let my husband's attitude intimidate me and kept a firm stance on the matter. But when I argued back to him, Ryan only got even more upset.
You can afford to pay the loan and send my mom money. What are you complaining about? Don't be so stingy and pay the goddamn money. You're not going to make my mom and sister work.
Don't be ridiculous! If you think it's so important to send your mother and your sister money, then why don't you send them money from your account? Help with the bills at least.
You earn more than I do. Why the hell do I have to pay for anything? You can afford everything on your own. My money is for me to spend the way I want.
That's not the problem. Why can't you—
Oh yeah, I forgot. There's another way to deal with this, without you having to send my mom money.
What's so funny?
It's nothing. Don't worry about it. Fine. You don't have to send my mom any money. I'll do as you say.
All of a sudden, my husband had changed his mind, and the way he was grinning about something he had remembered unnerved me. But I was just glad that he said that I didn't have to transfer any money to his mom's account anymore. I was relieved that we could pay the loans for a house without any problem. Just a few months after we had completed the plans for the new house, it was built, and almost ready to live in. I was so excited, but I had no idea that something terrible was about to happen. I was due for a business trip, and I would be out of the house for 3 whole days. I left Natalie to my husband and traveled to the other side of the country to have this business meeting. Thankfully, my work went smoothly at the meeting, and my presentation was a success. My business trip ended sooner than I had expected, and I ended up arriving home the day before I told my husband I would be home. When I got home, I expected that my daughter would run to the door to greet me like she always did, but it seemed that she wasn't home. Instead, there was an unfamiliar pair of sandals on the shoe rack that obviously belonged to a woman. In a split second, I realized that there was a possibility that my husband was having an affair, and sneaked towards the room where I could hear voices. As I got closer, I realized that I wasn't hearing a voice. I was hearing a woman moaning and gasping for breath.
The possibility became solid fact. I carefully nudged the living room door open and found my husband on top of a young woman right in the middle of doing it on the couch. The moment I saw Ryan having an affair, I almost screamed, but I did my best to stop myself from voicing it. I calmed down and thought about what had to be done. I took pictures of my husband and the young woman as evidence. Ryan wasn't paying for anything, the bills, the loan, and demanded that I send his mother and his sister money. And on top of that, he was having an affair. There was no way I could forgive him. There was no way I was going to let him walk all over me like that. I wasn't that kind of convenient woman. After taking all the pictures and videos I needed, I shoved the living room door open in anger and burst in on them, starting another round. Ryan was shocked to see me and began to make excuses.
Wait! This isn't what it looks like! She came on to me! I didn't do anything wrong! She seduced me!
I ignored him and argued back. You didn't do anything wrong? You can't possibly expect me to believe that! I'm filing for divorce, Ryan. When I announced that I wanted a divorce, he lost his temper.
And how do you think you're going to do that? We've already bought a new house together. Your name's on the contract too. There's no way you can get a divorce now. But if you really want to get divorced, then be prepared to continue paying for the loan. You and Natalie can go and live wherever you like, but I'm going to live in the new house. If you're fine with that, then you can file for a divorce. I don't care. The house is in my name, and it's mine. If you want a divorce, then you're the one that should get out.
Apparently, my husband thought I wasn't serious about getting a divorce because we were just a couple of weeks away from moving into our new home. He seemed to think that he had the advantage despite me catching him with another woman, and was adamant that he was going to make me continue to pay for the loan. He used the fact that we had joint ownership of the house as a reason to argue that the house was his, and that he wasn't going to let me take it away if we get divorced. Ryan didn't even show any guilt for what he had done. He only declared his right to live in that house, and his intention to make me pay for it. It was too late, but I regretted not signing the contract in my own name. I knew that I would be paying, so I cursed myself for not thinking ahead. And then, from that day onwards, Ryan started spending entire nights away from home. He had always used overtime as an excuse to come home late, but now I knew that it was because of his affair. He didn't make any excuses and just didn't come home at all. He didn't ask me for forgiveness and only laughed at me when I spoke up.
You can't get a divorce! You're stuck with me!
His invincible attitude pissed me off, but the way he threatened me also made me just realize how humiliating and inhumane his treatment of me had been. I felt that I couldn't live with him any longer and was certain that I wanted to get away from him. So I used whatever time I could to research on divorce and find out if there was any way for me to win in demand of a fault divorce. I found a lawyer office where I could ask for advice in private and without any cost, and decided to ask them for help. According to the lawyer, even if we had joint ownership of the house and there were still payments left to be made, I could fight to gain complete ownership of the new house and get an advantageous divorce for my husband as long as I had evidence that he was at fault. In my case, it meant that I needed photos and videos I had taken of his rendezvous with that woman. Once I heard that, I was confident that I could win the divorce case, and I wasn't worried about the aftermath either. After all, I had spent years working, doing the housework, and raising Natalie all by myself, without any help from Ryan, except for when I was on the occasional business trip. I decided to hire a lawyer on the spot, and was determined to get a divorce from Ryan and live a new life with Natalie in a new home. A few days after that, I handed Ryan the divorce papers. I took a chance when he came home in the middle of the night, exhausted being out with his lover. He looked like he was fed up with explaining what he would do if he filed them, but he just signed them anyway.
You think you can scare me with threats like this? Go on, file it if you dare. But you're not gonna, because you can't.
And he seemed to think that I wasn't being serious. He had underestimated me. Ryan didn't know that I had evidence of his affair and thought that he was still on the higher ground. It didn't cross his mind that I was ready to file the papers and take them to court as compensation, but thanks to his carelessness, he signed the divorce papers without any problems. So I took the papers and had them filed before he changed his mind and decided that he should destroy them in case I did use them. Early the next morning, I took the papers to the clerk's office and had the clerk take a look at them before heading straight to see my lawyer and asking her for advice on what to do next. I began preparing the documents necessary for demanding compensation and child support and wrote up a statement with my lawyer so that we could make my husband understand the position he was in. After talking to a lawyer and before we went to pick up my daughter from kindergarten, I stopped by the house to get some things when I found that Ryan, who had come home early from work, was starting to pack things up for the move.
Huh? You're home early today? Well, I was gonna tell you tonight anyway. My mom and sister are coming to live with us at the new house. That'll save you from having to send them money, right? When I told my mom that you said that you didn't want to give them any more money, She told me that you didn't have to, and that they would just come and live with us. The new house is in my name, so you don't have any problems with that, do you?
My husband still hadn't realized that I had actually filed the papers he had signed the previous night, and I'd gone as far as deciding that my mother-in-law and sister-in-law would be living with us without my permission. I was exasperated with how much he had underestimated me, and I told him, but I've already filed for a divorce. You're going to get a statement in the mail in a few days.
You're joking. What? What are you going to do about the house? We have joint ownership. I'm warning you, I'm not the one that's moving out. I'm going to the new house.
Sure, then why don't we talk about this through a lawyer? You're at fault for cheating on me, and I'm demanding compensation from you and your lover. There's no way I'm losing to you in this case.
Don't screw with me! How are you going to demand compensation when you don't have any evidence of my affair? You can't prove anything! So give up on calling a lawyer. It's my house, so I'm going to live in it. You and Natalie can get the hell out and go wherever you want. That new house is for me, my mom, and my sister.
Ryan seemed confident that I couldn't do anything, but the moment I revealed to him that I had already gotten proof that he was cheating on me, he suddenly began to show panic and was stumbling on his words.
You're just bluffing. I know that you're lying. Do you really think that you can trick me? Where's the evidence? Go on, show me.
Here, take a look. I showed him all the pictures I had taken of him and the young woman when they were naked and groping at each other on the couch. And he must have finally realized that he was at a disadvantage because he suddenly became desperate to get back on my good side and apologize for his behavior.
All right. I'll break up with her. I won't ever meet her ever again. So just give me those photos and delete them. Don't show them to your lawyer.
Oh, you're sorry? But I've already printed them out and handed them over as evidence to my lawyer. It's too late for that now.
What did you say? Why would you do that? We've already sold my mom's house to get ready for moving into the new house. They won't have anywhere else to go. Where am I supposed to go if I can't live in the new place? What do I do?
That's none of my business. You didn't mention anything about them moving in with us until last minute, so why should I care what happens to you or them? Ryan made a fuss not wanting to get divorced, but I kicked him out anyway and started packing mine and Natalie things up to have them taken into the moving truck and driven to our new house. Once we moved and settled in, my daughter and I began living in our new house without anyone getting in our way. As a result of the court case, my husband was found guilty of having an affair and was awarded a full divorce. Ryan had to leave and find an apartment on his own, but since his name was still on the contract for the house, he owed half of the loan payments every month. On top of that, he was ordered to pay compensation and child support and could no longer afford to spend all of his salary on eating and drinking and doing whatever he liked and used to do. It turns out his mistress was only interested in his money and dumped him as soon as she found out that he couldn't afford to shower her with presents like he used to. Of course, I also wanted compensation from the woman who was just as responsible for breaking up our family. But I was shocked when I found out she was only 22 years old. She had only just started her own career when everyone in her office had found out that she had been having an affair, and she was left with no choice but to resign from her company when rumors started going on around her. I hope that she takes this chance to learn from her mistakes and doesn't do anything as irresponsible as this ever again. As for my ex-husband, his mother and sister had already sold off their house, so he had no choice but to take them in, and they started living together in a cramped apartment in the outskirts of the city far from any station. He owed money for the loan, for my compensation, and for the rent, and his salary wasn't enough to cover the household bills and groceries, so his mother and sister also had to find jobs of their own to pitch in and pay for their own part. Until we got divorced, he had been completely reliant on me, so I'm sure that he's going to suffer a lot to make it without supporting himself. Ever since he started living such a miserable lifestyle, he tried to contact me a few times, telling me that he had broken up with his mistress and that he wanted to get back together with me. He's been begging that he wants to live with us again and that he won't ever make the same mistake. But it definitely didn't make any difference. I wasn't interested in falling for his trick ever again and declined him politely.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.